A Tribe Called Quest just released We Got It From Here, Thank You for Your Service. Their first album in 18 years. Here to discuss this momentous release and the story behind its recording, we're joined by writer and co-host of Penn's own binge-worthy Touré. We also have the hip-hop artist and co-host of Sway in the Morning, Heather B., and director and producer at the legendary Apollo Theater, Kamilah Forbes. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Touré, you got the chance to interview members of Tribe Called Quest prior to the announcement of this surprise final album. How long in the making was this record?
They did a performance on Jimmy Fallon late in 2015, and the vibe was so great. They were like, we love being back together. This really fits. For years and years before that, Fife had been saying, come on, let's do another album. And Tip was like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. He said he wanted it to be perfect. And finally, he felt the vibe. And that night, Tip said, let's do it. So they really started late December 2015, early January 2015. So that's when they really started this journey. They didn't know that Fife was so sick that he was close to death. So they were like, you know, we're moving forward. We're doing this is great. Fife was talking about, let's move to New Jersey so we have houses near each other. So he was talking about the future, buying a new ring for his wife, these sorts of things. So when he passed, you know, they were all shocked and they all had to find a way to keep going. So, I mean, he doesn't finish and then pass away. He was in the midst of doing his thing and passed away. So he would have recorded more if only he'd had more time. But they're super proud and happy of what they got out of him. He's on a lot of songs. Yeah. It's really amazing to hear him part of this. And on point, right? I mean, like 18 years away from the game, Tip is still sharp, Fife is still sharp, Busta's still awesome, Consequence, I mean, like, it's amazing.
Yeah. Was there any sense from Q-Tip that it was difficult moving on with the recording after Fife's passing?
I asked him, was it hard to listen, and I was gonna say, to his voice. He cut me off like, absolutely. I don't even want to hear the rest of the question. Very, very hard to sit in that studio, his home studio in the basement of his house in Jersey, and listen to Fife's voice. And you know, when you're mixing an album, you are listening to
over and over.
And he's got to hear this voice. And he wants to celebrate Fife, and I think there's some happiness that we still have this bit of him, but so painful to hear the voice over and over and over and think about their brother is gone. The heart of Tribe Called Quest is the friendship between Fife and Tip from when they were 4 years old, right? They meet Ali and Jerobi a little bit later, right? Fife was the one who said, let's be rappers when they were 9, right? And then this journey happened.
Heather, you know, at the time of Tribe's debut, hip-hop was in a pretty different place. Was the impact of their debut felt right away? Could you get a sense immediately that this was different and this was going to change hip-hop?
Immediately. I'm from New Jersey, born and raised in New Jersey, which in that time when the album came out, New Jersey was like over there, even though it was very close to New York. A lot of Jersey rappers didn't get any love, with the exception of Queen Latifah, I would say, because she was ushered in, you know, through the whole family and the collective, you know, if you will. But Tribe Called Quest was felt immediately, the music, the beats, the vibe, Bonita Applebum, the clothes. I think we all related to how they dressed and what they wore, because the images prior to that was a lot of gold chains and things like that. Not every kid could afford that, you know, so here you had these guys kind of embracing their ethnicity, you know.
Afrocentricity.
Absolutely. It was just, so we all kind of connected and related to that, so
You think about, like, KRS-One, Rakim, right? It was very urban, right?
Yeah.
And we loved that. Yeah. But they took it to a different place, right? A little more intellectual. And not that KRS brilliant, Rakim brilliant, but like, you know, Afrocentricity, a little more book learning with it.
And the thing about it, though, that was great about what the Tribe did, they still respected those artists.
Right.
You know, they paid homage to those artists and respected those artists and saluted them as well. Women, they were really big on, and you know, so it was just dope. When the Tribe Called Quest first dropped, it was just like, wow. They were everybody heroes, I think.
But we were like, left my wallet in El Segundo. Like that's so random. Like El Segundo, you left your wallet in this weird story.
But it's the randomness that made them so special.
Yes, it is.
Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't random. It was they had a unique voice and filled a void where there was none. You know what I mean? So,
Kamilah, they were considered part of the Native Tongues Collective, which was, you know, De La Soul, the Jungle Brothers, a much more sort of
Queen Latifah.
a much more positive approach, I think, to music at that time. Is that still carried on around to this day? Can you feel their influence and that positivity in hip hop still today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, their influence has been felt by so many artists. I mean, I think several generations of artists, and we still see that manifestation in artists like, Kendrick or J. Cole today.
Kanye,
Pharrell.
Common.
I mean, you listen, Common for
definitely.
sure.
I mean, they talk about even D'Angelo, right?
Yeah.
Lauryn Hill, right? I mean, the Tribe Called
absolutely.
Quest family tree is large.
And they defined that moment. They defined that moment of hip hop and political and social activism, which is now we can also see in political activism as well, through things like, Hip Hop Summit and Action Network. And so hip hop and politics have really gone hand in hand. Wow.
Tribe is universal. They are a universal hip hop group.
Well, I think it speaks to their again, coming back to that uniqueness, right?
Yeah.
Coming back to that randomness. The more specific I think that they got into their approach, the more universal their message became, and also the timelessness, right? That we're seeing now, even in their message, is that they've been able to, make their word, their message right now completely relevant.
Is that what cements them in the history of hip hop? Is that attitude towards the genre?
That's part of it, and 2 classic albums and many classic singles.
Yeah.
They made us dance, they made us think. I mean, they're sort of, touching every base, and inspiring the next, and could really spit and had, great music. I mean, bringing jazz into the mix in a way that no other group really ever did.
And the way the music to this is the soundtrack. Like you can hear a Tribe song right now and go right back to that summer and go right back to where you wore your jeans a certain kind of way and you started seeing women locking their hair. And it just takes you back to a place where we were proud to be a part of the hip hop community. We were proud to bob our heads and nod our beats. It was the music that, when your mother came in the room or came in the kitchen, you didn't have to turn it down.
Right.
But you were still doing hip hop, and she would even ask, "What's that? Who is that?" So
Don't let her hear the song with Ron Carter.
Well,
She's like, what? Now I'm into it. That's my jam.
And even the artwork. Think about how far back these albums go, and when you see the artwork now, it's still relevant. It still means something. You can identify with those colors. When you see the red, you see the green, you see the black, you see the silhouettes. That's Tribe.
And you talk about the covers too. The covers weren't their faces like ego gesture, I'm the man.
Right.
One of their most famous covers had tons of pictures of everybody else, or they'd have, the Low End Theory was this red, black, and green person painted. So it wasn't like, we are so great, which clearly they are, but their visual imagery was saying, this is about everything, everybody.
The album's coming out at an extreme moment in our political history. Does it feel like the Tribe Called Quest album is kind of helping heal some of those wounds?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And watching them on SNL on Saturday night, the only word I can use was healing. It was, I needed that. I needed that We the People. I needed that moment and that articulation of emotions that quite frankly, I had not the words for. And many of us did not have the words for, the state of the world and what we're living in right now.
And Dave Chappelle added to that as well. He's a hip hop head. He knows. It was all a part of it. It was genius on both ends. So we all needed it.
And I loved the way they included Fife in the performance with the mural that unfurls in the middle. It was so hip hop. It was unexpected, but it's beautiful.
Does the new album bridge the gap between the past, their music from before, and the sort of current trends or what's been innovated in the hip hop genre at this moment, 18 years later?
I definitely think it does. I mean, for my first listen on the new album, it was almost, I felt like this vintage throwbackness. There was this feeling of like early mid '90s.
Yeah.
But there's something else underneath. There's another current that I think makes it that much more urgent. Right? Makes the, maybe it's in the language, maybe it's in the messaging, maybe it's also in the narrative that Fife is no longer with us, but there's something about the album that makes it even that much more.
And what they were able to do, I think, too, is that their initial audience is just as well-traveled now as they are, as well-versed. We can appreciate the different sounds. I think our ears have grown a little bit. And then for their new audience, if you will, or the young kids, that I met a 19-year-old kid on the elevator the other day that's like, I got the new Tribe.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I was judging, but I was just like, what do you know about the new Tribe? He said, I wanted to hear it. I wanted to understand.
Yes.
And it's done in a way where a 19-year-old can understand it, and then their original audience can still appreciate it.
And hopefully bring that 19-year-old back to those original albums as well.
I mean, some rappers with an 18-year gap, they don't sound the same.
No,
right?
it's
They
true.
sound like,
Right,
you know, like an
right.
athlete who's
Right.
lost
Yeah,
a
yeah,
step.
yeah,
These guys, they don't sound like that to me. Like Tip, Fife, Consequence, Busta, they sound on point, like they haven't taken a break. That's really impressive. That's hard to do.
Extremely hard to do.
So is this a fitting album for Tribe's final album?
Every
I
time
don't
we
know
talk
if
about
it's
the
final.
I mean, he said final,
Yeah.
but we have seen groups run DMC move on after
in different formation.
I mean I can't even answer the question because just the notion of like the final Tribe album and thinking about Fife, you sort of stopped me of like.
But I will say for this moment in time, I think it's definitely fitting.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.